All right, you're welcome back. If you're just joining us, a very beautiful morning to you, myself, and David. We're still here, and this is actually the breakfast time. I like to call it the breakfast time because this is where we pick a topic, we get experts, and we talk about it. Recently, something has been trending. It's very awful. It's not a joke, and it's something very bitter. But then, David, please do justice to that.
Yes, there have been cases of child abuse and molestation in different parts of Nigeria and the world. And recently, the story of Ochaya in Benue State became a topic. So that's why this morning we're looking at child abuse.
You keep hearing stories of a 70-year-old man raping a 3-year-old child. Sometimes you even go as far as hearing a story of a 40-year-old man raping, or let me say molesting, say 6-month-old baby. But then the story of Ochaya has become so trendy that even the Benue State Otuku local government area in Benue State actually named a street after her. Well, if you're wondering what it's all about, Otuku is a 13-year-old girl who is in JSS1, and she stays with her mother's cousin. Then the husband of this woman and the son they continuously molested her for
5
years.
years. 5 years, from when she was 8, yes, till 13 years, till she died out of complications.
All right, so we have that video here. We're going to be bringing you that video so you understand why we really have to talk about child abuse.
Esquire, spokesperson for Federal Government Girls College Old Students Association. I stand here before you that we want justice, to let the Ministry of Justice know that we want justice for one of us. Most of us here are old students of the Federal Government Girls College, Boko, the school where the late Ochaya attended before her demise. And we are here today to tell the Minister of Justice that we want justice for the rapist's son, because we learned that initially he was arrested and he got his freedom and was walking freely on the streets of Benue State. So we are just here simply to ask for justice, and that is why we are here. And we stand on it. Our girls are not safe. Most girls are not safe. Most girls cannot speak out from the rapists.
What a very sad and tragic end for such a young girl. Oh, I don't really know what to say, but our condolences to her family.
And joining us in the studio to look at this issue of child abuse and molestation, because molestation is part of it, is Lovett Goodness Irokich, girl child activist. Good morning. Welcome to ABS. We also have Mr. Francis Chidi Obidibo Esquire, a legal practitioner. You're welcome.
Thank you. Good
morning.
Certainly
we are looking at the legal angles and the legal implications of some of these things. So let's kick off.
All right, so we just saw that video. Are you conversant with that story, because it's really very trendy?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Okay, so now as a girl child activist, before I go to the lawyer, we saw a lot of placards and we're saying, hang the rapist. Do you really believe that the penalty for rape should be death?
Well, I I must say the trending issue is a very disheartening one, and it requires a great repercussion. That means the action to take should not be spared at all. But looking at the death sentence, I wouldn't know. I don't think it's the best option to take. I think they should have a sentence to prison, or I don't know.
So
prison
you think
would be better.
death is going too far?
Anyway, when it comes to death penalty, I think it should be on severe cases. You know,
This is that wait,
girl actually died from.
She's a girl child activist.
Okay.
Now that's a 13-year-old girl. Her life just snapped out of her. You don't think it's a severe case?
It is.
So you think death for the rapist is too severe?
No, if it's in this case, you know, we have different cases of rape. We have the minors and the majors. Now, when it has to do with the major case, that is something like this, it should be death sentence. And
What are these ones that are actually minor cases?
you know, we have the ones that maybe, you know, they don't get severe, you know, yes, they'll give them medical attention, but it won't warrant to death of the patient. Maybe the person will get medical attention and recover. I had an issue back then in school, a student that was raped. She was given medical attention and she recovered. Now, the young man that did it faced the law. He didn't get a death sentence. I don't know if you understand.
All right.
But when it has to do with death, I mean, the victim dying, I think death penalty.
But psychologically, that individual is dead for life. That I don't think, and anyway, that's not my view. That's why you guys are here. So let me talk. Let me talk to the lawyer right now. Please, can you, according to the law, explain to us what is child abuse and child molestation? Is there really a minor and a major case?
Yes, there are. According to the Criminal Code Act, which governs the criminal aspect of the law in Nigeria, Cap 77, Laws of the Federation, there is a discrepancy between you said rape?
Yes.
Yes.
Another forms of child molestation.
Please,
That's it.
can I come
Okay.
in a little?
Okay.
Are you Igbo?
I'm an
You're
Igbo.
Igbo, right?
course.
Biko, can you mix it up? Because you've been quoting subsection.
Okay.
If we go on, just break it down a little, mix it up, okay?
Yes, there is a discrepancy
Okay.
in the Criminal Code Act.
Okay.
The Criminal Code Act is the law that governs the criminal aspect of Nigerian society. Yes. There's a discrepancy between what the Act provides for somebody who rapes somebody who is a major, that's somebody who's above 18 years, because the law says if you are below 18 years, you are a minor.
Yeah.
There's a discrepancy between the punishment the law ascribes to one who defiles or rapes a minor and a major.
What is this discrepancy?
The discrepancy is that the law attaches a heavier weight and a heavier sentence on one who defiles a minor. In fact, it is absurd. The law totally frowns at it. Now, to start with, when we talk about rape has to do, in law, rape has to do with having unlawful carnal knowledge. We call it carnal knowledge of somebody without the person's consent. That consent is what matters. Now, for a minor, there is nothing like a consent. Because if you are below the age of 18, the law have not ascribed you the authority to give consent. Yes. So once anybody has anything to do with a minor sexually, it is absurd. The law treats it with very heavy sentence, whether or not the lady gives you consent, because she doesn't have the right to give consent.
A minor doesn't have the right to consent. Well, we're not just talking about child rape today, we're talking about child abuse. And don't forget that roommate is always very faithful. Roommate, as usual, she's on the street to bring us child waka. Sorry.
Street waka.
Street waka. And after street waka, when we return, we'll be talking about other aspects of child abuse.
everyone, welcome to Street Waka on the Weekend Show. Today on Street Waka, we're going to be focusing on the topic child abuse in our society. Let's go into the streets and find out what the public have to say about this topic.
Actually, child abuse is a broad statement. It's an encompassing word, you understand? Because why I say so is that people tend to limit child abuse on physical abuse, but that's not true. Child abuse encompasses even verbal abuse. You know, sometimes some children, you can tell them things that will make them recall to themselves and they don't talk anymore. They can be bullied in school through verbal method or physical method. And do you know the funny part of it? Almost everybody is somehow directly or indirectly involved in child abuse. Well, the first thing that from my own observation, I think the child first isolates himself, his or herself. That's the first sign of abuse. When you see a child and that child somehow doesn't, children normally get excited over little things. But you see the child recalling to his or herself, not being involved with the things that children normally do. And you should ask questions. Okay. Particularly when it's not in the nature of the child to do that. All of a sudden, you see that the child is staying alone, avoiding people. Yeah. Maybe the teacher, maybe the father, maybe anybody start avoiding people and stays on his or her own. That's time to ask questions.
Child abuse is a very bad condition in this Nigeria. You understand? When a child is being maltreated, when a child is being exposed to things the child is not supposed to be exposed to, the child is being abused. So it's condemnable. It's not good. Yes, if you see a child that is abused, the child will be a kind of withdrawn. And it affects the child's psyche. It affects the child's ability to express his or herself. When a child is abused and you see that child, you find out that the potentials in that child is being suppressed. So it's very bad to abuse a child.
Yeah, I think that child abuse in society is not that good. It's very bad. Like, it causes some child, it affects them mostly, both physically and mentally. Yes.
Well, we heard what the people have to say about the topic child abuse in our society today. So you viewers at home, what do you think about child abuse? What are the signs or symptoms you can actually check in a child who is abused? I mean, think about the sexual abuse, the emotional abuse the child is actually going through. I mean, what will be going through your head? I mean, what do you think the government is actually doing to make sure that child abuse leaves our society? Well, I leave you with that question to answer. All right, that's how we wrap it up on the program Street Waka on the Weekend Show. I am Ogenere Melgogome. Thanks for watching.
So we all now know that child abuse might not just be rape. It can be loads of other things. It can be verbal, it can be not verbal. So you're welcome back. Don't forget, we still have our guests, our beautiful guests. We have Goodness. Can I call you Goodness? Yes. Good. I like calling him lawyer. The way you keep quoting subsection. I just like calling him lawyer. All right, so David, you want to start?
Yes. When you talk about child abuse, you are including both molestations on male children and girl child. And I begin to wonder, is it that the reason for this rise in child abuse cases in Nigeria and even in society is that we've not actually paid attention to it? Is it that what we define as child abuse in our environment is actually extreme and not those little things that tend to abuse a child's psychological and physical health? What do you say?
Well, you were right to a great extent, you know. When the issue of child abuse pops up, the question, what comes up in people's mind is rape and has to do with the girl child, then they fail to recognize that child abuse goes beyond rape and beyond the girl child. The boy child is also involved. And when we overlook these little things that matters, that is where the problem starts coming. You know, abuse simply has to do with exploitation. And of course, we have different types of abuse, just like the audience, the people from the Voice Pop said. We have physical abuse, we have emotional, we have psychological, we have social abuse. That's when it has to do with isolation, neglect and isolation. And I would like to add at this juncture that most people that are being abused tend to, if they are not being noticed, like this issue, the ones that we know, the secret ones, the ones that don't voice out, they tend to become abusers in the future. That is when it has to do with the boy child. Now, when this boy grows up, sometimes they are silenced because they'll be like, no one would pay attention, nobody.
Look at that, a child of less than 5 years being administered with alcohol.
That is it. That is what we are talking about. It's not just about the girl child. The boy child is also should be brought into the picture. Now, when these ones grow up, they become menace. They are the one that exploits those girls. Because when they were tender, they were exploited as well.
Yeah, goodness, I like to take it from there. Now, let's go back to the law. You spoke about the law having provision for punishment of child rape. What about other abuses on children? For instance, a very common abuse is the verbal abuse. A lot of times, if one is very observant in Nigeria, especially the mothers, not just the mothers, everybody feel they can tell a child anything.
The way they want to.
The way they want to. So I want to ask, is there any provision in the law for, how do I put it, handling or prosecuting people who abuse children verbally? And then if you can go ahead and tell us other types of abuse that are recognized by Nigerian law.
Thank you very much. To start with, my name is Francis Chidi Obidibo.
Okay. So you still don't mind it? Okay, I'm going to.
But it's a Francis.
I just like calling you lawyer. Okay, Francis. All right.
Yes. Coming to your question, the law has actually gone a bit further to treat issues of child abuse, giving it exceptional treatment. Right now, there is a law, a special law now called the Child Acts Law of 2004, Anambra State. There is now a full compendium of a book dedicated to Child Act. In that law, you find out what the law says is child abuse. Of course, just like very similar to what the dictionary defines. Abuse having to deal with the physical, sexual, and psychological molestation of a child, especially by their parents or their guardians. So that is child abuse, generally. Now,
what about verbal child abuse? Is there any law against abusing a child
that
verbally?
law also encompasses that, because when you talk about verbal, it's based on what you say that we act on the psyche of someone. If you talk to me anyhow and it doesn't affect me psychologically, it doesn't affect me negatively, you have not done any impact in my life.
So, talking about the angle of law, how far have we been able to implement this? Child rights law or act has been in Anambra State particularly since 2004. And some other states, I think 26 other states have been able to pass that.
They have.
How have we been able to implement this to secure a better future for our children and to secure even a better environment, ecosystem for them?
The law has been effective as far as I know, because the issue is this. The problem is that most children who are abused are not speaking up.
Okay.
It's only when there's a complaint that the law takes its course.
Okay, talking about not speaking up, please, can you in 1 minute, as your conclusion, tell us how a child can access this law?
This law is available in every court in Nigeria.
I'm talking about a child, being a child, not knowing the way to the court and everything.
How would he speak up? How would he speak up?
Yes. Yeah. Now, children now form children forums children academic and group forums wherein they interview the members and they pick, and they have, most schools now have lawyers who consult for them. Okay. I consult for 2 in Inewi.
So secondary schools, public or private?
Secondary and primary schools.
Private schools or
private schools are the one not happening.
So you're now saying that children should speak up to their teachers, their schools, if they can't trust their parents.
If they can't trust their parents, they should speak up.
I'm sorry, we don't really have much time. So let me get back to you, Goodness. Goodness, can you maybe say in summary your last word? Okay.
In summary, I would like to say that speaking up, it's not really that easy for children. But what will we do when parents don't have time for their kids, when teachers don't pay attention, when caregivers don't pay, even in the churches? So this organization, this community, this association should sit up to their duties.
All right, they should sit up to their duties. David, you have a last word?
Yes, I do, because this issue is something that we actually need to pay very good attention to, especially when we are becoming so individualistic in our society. You see what's happening to the next child in your next neighborhood, you keep quiet because it's not your child.
Exactly.
Today, do something. Exactly. That's what we are advocating for.
All right, today, do something. As a parent, as a teacher, you know your child very well. I think you should be your child's best friend so that your child can trust you enough. And now, still, our condolences still goes out to the Ochara family. Sorry for your loss. Well, the weekend show continues with breakfast news coming your way soon. Stay tuned.
All the weekday stress from work, what do you wake up to?
The Weekend Show on ABS TV.